So I just sit right here? I never really did anything like this before. It's just so many cameras. I guess we're getting straight into it. I'm Lexy. I'm 23 and a Sagittarius. My pastimes are talking shit about people and getting too emotionally invested into fictional characters. Why I'm here today? Well, it's embarrassing to say, but I'm here because I have no friends. I never really had a long-term friendship, and I'm here to tell you why. So, it starts with my childhood. Doesn't everything start with your childhood? I am the youngest of 3 siblings. I don't need to further explain any issue that I have at this point. I'm just kidding. My 2 older siblings are only 2 years apart. Since they were so close in age, they always went to school with each other. They were around the same people, had similar interests. I really struggled a lot to understand and get close with my siblings. I was a nerdy, younger, shy little sister, and they were like the cool, extroverted, like older siblings. I think it was easier for all of us to just stay separate than try to understand each other. It was easier for it to be that way. Emotional neglect doesn't necessarily just come from your siblings. A lot of it comes from your parents. When you're the youngest, especially if there's like any type of gap in age, if your parents already were parents to other people, I feel like they didn't feel like they need to do as much with me. And I think it was worse because I was always known as the responsible kid. They didn't feel the need to have to teach me things because I already knew how to do a lot of things on my own just from watching them and watching my siblings. That emotional neglect did influence my ability to build relationships with other people. Now that I'm older, like, I understand that it wasn't anything personal. In the moment, I definitely felt like an outcast in my family. From my perspective, it wasn't hard for everyone else to build bonds with each other. It was always so hard for me to build bonds with them. And the only difference between them and me is just me. There had to be something wrong with me. It's like narcissism in the opposite way. Like when someone's a narcissist, they think like everything revolves around them, but in a positive way. I thought things revolved around me in a negative way. I was the issue for everything. When I was in school and it was time for me to make friends, I went into it with the same mentality. I'm the problem and I'm the issue. Your family is supposed to love you unconditionally, and if I felt like an outcast in that environment, it's hard to feel like I won't be an outcast in any other environment. I often felt like when I talked, nobody was necessarily listening. My interest and my opinions felt like background noise in other people's lives, and the thing about background noise is nobody necessarily notices when it stops. I went into it with the mentality of, if I'm going to be an outcast, I'm gonna let that be my choice, and that's when I started to isolate myself. It didn't really take long for me to fade into a little corner. Most of my childhood, I felt like a piece of furniture, like an end table. Nobody really knows that it's there until they need to put something on it or until they accidentally bump into it. I didn't realize how bad my isolation was until I got older. This instance happened to me multiple times where family members would be telling a story to me as if I wasn't there. Once they realize that they've been telling me a story that I was actually present for, they'll usually say, well, you're so quiet. It was always so hard to realize you were there. And I guess they weren't necessarily wrong. It was easier to be quiet than to try to get people around me to understand me or even go further and like me. Even being in a room full of people, I found ways to isolate myself. I always thought isolation was a lot easier, but a part of me just didn't want to admit that I didn't really value myself enough as a human being to even build relationships with the people around me. Honestly, think that was a harder pill to swallow. When you spend a lot of time alone, you become hyper aware of who you are. You get the good, the bad, and the ugly. And sometimes you just genuinely don't like what you get. I truthfully hated myself. I hated the fact that I found the life cycle of a butterfly more interesting than a Barbie. I even hated the fact that I liked Bratz dolls more than Barbie dolls. Anything I liked or enjoyed was always viewed as something bad because the people around me liked and enjoyed other things. If they like other things and they don't like me, maybe those things are the reason why they didn't like me. There always had to be a reason for everything. I think I looked at it from like a simple kid mentality. If someone doesn't talk to me, it's because they don't like me. If I do talk to someone and they're not listening, it's because they don't like what I have to say. Now that I'm older, I realize that it's not anyone's responsibility to understand you, and it's not anyone's responsibility to even like you. What's important is you understand and like yourself. So when it is time to make friends, they have similar beliefs and interests as you. Your confidence within yourself will be seen by the people around you, and that's how you make friends. My insecurities didn't only stem from internal attributes. I was tall, I was chubby, and I was nerdy. Sometimes I felt like when I did make friends, people were only friends with me because I made them look better. I was the fat, funny friend. If anyone's ever been that, sometimes that feels more lonely than being alone. Nobody sees you, nobody understands you, and nobody really cares what you have to say. You're just there in the corner to make people feel better about themselves. So most of my insecurities started when I started cheerleading. I was once told by one of my teammates while I was waiting in line that skinny girls should be in line first. I was literally just waiting in line to go to the bathroom, not bothering anybody. And what's crazy is the comments about my body were not only made by teammates and friends, they were also made by coaches, the adults in my life that were supposed to protect me and make me feel loved and safe. I got the comments complaining about the fact that they have to special order my uniform, and if I lost weight, then they wouldn't have to go through that hassle. By the time I was in the 6th grade, I was already 5'7". You were gonna have to special order my uniform anyway. I did not fit in a normal kid's uniform. My self-worth was measured by my waist size. It was draining. Nothing was ever good enough. Not my weight, not my looks, not my personality. Nothing about me was good enough for the people around me. I went back to my mentality of when I was a kid. I wasn't good enough, and there was always something wrong with me. After a while, I genuinely didn't think that I was a good person. I wasn't a person who deserved love or friendships. It felt like I was alone for that reason. I will say that I kind of came out of my shell a little bit more end of middle school, starting high school. I went from caring too much to genuinely not giving a fuck at all. At this point, I spent a lot of my time alone, and I learned to actually like myself, which is such a crazy concept. I guess that's the main pro and con of spending time alone. You get to know who you are, and you get the good, the bad, and the ugly. Sometimes you don't like what you get, but you learn to live with what you get. At that point, I didn't care if anyone liked me because I liked myself, and I had no problem being alone and being by myself. Kind of became a person that even I wanted to be around, which I never thought that would happen. I think at that point, I realized it didn't matter what size I was, what I said, how I dressed. It didn't matter who I was as a person in general. Someone was always going to find something wrong with it, and there were going to be some people who liked it. And it was kind of freeing knowing that I could be whoever I wanted to be, because there was always going to be someone who didn't like me. So I'd rather them not like the true version of myself than a facade that I put on to get them to like me. And I think that realization and that mentality helped me make friends, because I became a truer version of myself, and I was able to make friends with people who were similar to that. And honestly, I loved it. I loved having friends, and I loved creating bonds with the people around me in general. Everything was fine, but then I started going through a lot of personal things at home. During this time period, I think that was like my first low and my first rock bottom. That's when I realized that a lot of my friendships were filler friendships. If I didn't go out of my way to talk to my friends, they would never talk to me. And I think that made me feel like how I was when I was a kid. Nobody cared if I was there. Nobody cared what I had to say. I didn't have the physical and mental capabilities of hanging out with my friends or even just texting them. Slowly but surely, my friendship started to trickle down. I guess I could actually say a part of me still holds resentment. Like, how'd you not notice I was going through something? At some point, I wasn't even hiding it. I didn't have the capability of hiding it anymore, and still nobody noticed. Like, you're supposed to be my friend and you didn't even ask me if I was okay. It made me think, were we really friends, or were you just so lonely that you rather have anyone than no one at all? I'm human enough now to understand that absence doesn't always make the heart grow fonder. It's not always that simple. I did technically neglect those friendships. I wasn't present, I wasn't there, and that could cause relationships to end. So I understand it's partly my fault. In order for a friendship to last, both parties have to be involved. It's kind of like a 50-50 agreement. But also, I'm human enough to understand that some people can't always give 50% every single day. Relationships are not that simple. Human beings are not that simple, and 50-50 isn't necessarily realistic when you're talking about friendships or relationships in general. In a way, both of us neglected our friendship, and we both dealt with it in the same way, which was letting the friendship dissolve. I kind of realized that those friendships were never going to last in the first place, and I think that's okay. We grew and we bonded together, and then we went our separate ways, and that's just how life is. Outgrowing friendships is completely normal. I honestly think if you're doing life right, you'll constantly go through seasons like this because you're constantly going to be changing. And it's the same for the friends that you have. Not all plants grow in the same direction. Just because a friendship or relationship didn't last forever doesn't necessarily mean that it was a waste at all. I truly believe that you learn something from every friendship that you have. You become a mosaic of the people that are around you, and there's beauty in that. I went so long without having close friends that I thought any friendship was a good friendship, and that's not always the case. It changed my perspective a lot, and once again, I turned my life experience into insecurities within myself. Do people who struggle with mental illnesses deserve friends? Do I, as a person who struggles with mental illness, deserve to have friends? A part of me thought that living in my brain every day was draining, and I can only imagine how draining it is to be around someone like that. Am I the problem? Is there something wrong with me? I felt rejected. And that's where a new fear came from, my fear of rejection. I now, as an adult, am insecure about even the best parts of me. It's just human nature. If I do break down that wall and build a friendship with someone and bond with someone and they don't like me, I 100% think that will break me. That fear of me getting rejected goes deeper than someone just not liking me. Sometimes it makes me feel like that little girl who was never heard or understood. I feel like I need to protect that child who was an outcast in their family, in their friendships, and in life in general. I want to protect her in ways that the people around me couldn't. She deserves to feel safe and wanted, but so do I. I tricked myself into thinking that isolation kept me safe. But isolation isn't safety, it's a bubble. You deserve to be around people who love and care about you. You deserve to be around people who see you for you. It's not their responsibility to like every part of you, but as a friend, it's their responsibility to love you regardless. As I transition into adulthood, well, technically I am an adult. I'm 23. I'm not a kid. I find it harder to create and navigate friendships. And I think there are many factors to that. I feel like friendships as an adult are more transactional. As an adult, it's constantly like ingrained in your mind that like connections are everything. Connections are basically the foundation of adulthood. And I think that kind of trickled down into friendships. Even in college, and especially as like pre-med, most friendships were built during the semester, and you would spend a lot of time with someone and work with someone, study with people. But in reality, you guys were just helping each other out for that class. So once you pass and everybody's passed and they no longer have to take the class, there's really no point of talking to each other. It makes it so hard to find genuine relationships and bonds and friendships with the people around you. It's also hard to like break into friendship groups. I noticed that a lot of people my age are like friends with people in high school and friends with people they met in college, and those people have years of relationships and bonds that they built with this person. It is very hard to compete with that. Regardless, I'm gonna keep trying. I'm not using these as excuses not to talk to people and not to be around people. I still talk to people and I'm around people every single day. I just need to take it to the next level, and I need to put the effort in myself. But until I make friends, I'll enjoy my time alone. I don't need friendships to live my life how I want to. I'm alone, but I'm not lonely. So we'll see what happens next and who the universe brings. I am now 23. I am pretty much alone. I'm not lonely. I guess that's how I choose to look at things. I now view friendships differently, and I don't know, I I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. One day I will find my people. And I guess that's all that really matters. I have a feeling that I'll be okay. Anyways, thanks for listening to me talk. I know it may have been kind of long and boring, but it helped me a lot, and I hope it helped you too. Am I done? Okay. I'm still getting paid for this, right? So just sit right here. Damn, this chair's kind of crusty. Creaking, the budget must have been low, real low.